Scott Laigo, it's good to see you, buddy. We're missing our compadre. I don't even know how to say it in Spanish. What do you say, compadre, in Spanish?
Well, considering my Espanol is very limited,
Yeah.
and you're from Puerto Rico, I would think that you have a better attempt at that than I would. So,
all right, we'll just say we're missing Dory Bennett. She's a little under the weather, and hopefully she'll get better. So we'll miss some of the fire and brimstone that usually comes out of her. So hopefully she's putting all of that fire and brimstone toward getting better, and we'll see her shortly. Listen, Scott, man, what a way to put the cherry on top on the college football season. Obviously, there's always college football talk because there's so much stuff that's going on. First and foremost, what's your initial thought? Just your initial thought before we get into the nitty gritty of that championship game.
Well, I think initially, like everybody else, I mean, boring, Alabama and Georgia going again, and it was a yawner for 3 quarters. I mean, if you're a special guy like me, 9 to 6 is not exactly what you call a barn burner, and
the score at halftime, right?
And you're impressed with Georgia's job. They did a good job. Anytime that Alabama got in the red zone, they slowed them down. But boy, that fourth quarter now, that took it all off the top for me, and it was great. It was cool to see, and I think that we'll talk more about Stetson Bennett and what happened with him and the whole 9 yards. I just think that at the end of the day, it was a great finish to the year, and at the end of the day, I think the bottom line, I think we talked about it before, the 2 best teams played for the national championship. So, even though I know some Ohio State fans would say, wait a minute, hold on a second. So, but I do think the 2 best teams played at the moment at that time.
Yeah. And unless they, expand, and we'll get into some of that stuff later. I mean, Ohio State could say whatever they want. You lose games, you lose a big game in Oregon at home is going to cost you. So, everybody could say, hey, if we were in it, we would have had a chance, but you had a chance, and, you stubbed your toes on certain things. Listen, for Georgia fans, they've waited a long time. I mean, they had a true freshman in Herschel Walker. It was the last time that they won a national title when they defeated Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. I believe it was 17-10. And Herschel Walker has scored 2 touchdowns in that game and was named the Sugar Bowl MVP. If you're a Georgia fan, you've been stubbing your toe on that damn Bama and everybody else, how sweet it is because they celebrated like it was Mardi Gras out there.
Well, it was awesome. And the really cool part there was, I don't know if you saw the picture, but later after the game, Coach Dooley, the one who won the last national championship, and Coach Smart had a moment together. That was cool to see. And 41 years, unfortunately, makes me just feel old because I did watch that Herschel Walker national championship game. And so it added the years onto my life. But cool moment for the Georgia fans and them. And for Coach Smart, Saban was 24-0 heading into the year, and now he's 2 for 3 this year, beating his assistants. So I think that little thing off the top of the lid is off, and I think the assistants now feel like they can go do it. It's sort of like the mile, right? Ryan ran the 4-minute mile. Nobody thought he could do it, and then once he did it, everybody, out and did it. So. I think that misnomer is off the whole thing, but great credit to them, credit to the staff of Georgia, and I think I'm pretty sure that Ringo, the kid that scored the winning touchdown, there's a little connection. He played at Bellarmine High School in Tacoma his freshman year, transferred down to Alabama or in that area, and ends up at Georgia. So. Kind of a cool Pacific Northwest connection to the whole situation. So all the way around, a really good game.
Listen, it was incredible to listen to it on the television. I mean, it felt like 80% of the fans were there rooting for Georgia. It was deafening when Alabama got into the red zone. I mean, it was just so loud. So to see guys like Herschel Walker and Dooley, you mentioned, right, 201. He's got 201 wins. Going out there and being a part of the program, rich program at Georgia, and just having so many other people, fans, people from ESPN, that were there, and all around the country that tried to get down there. They came out in support. Before we move into some of the other stuff, do you think that's more of a Georgia thing or more of a, hey, listen, Nick, I know you're going for number 7, but let's pump people, like we're a little bit tired of seeing this act. We're going to root for somebody else, even though somebody else was at one point, the majority of the season, the number 1 team in the country. They were favored in this game. Number 1 defense across the board, points allowed, red zone defense, so on and so forth. What do you think the mindset is of the fans looking at that game?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I think that everybody's, was just happy to see somebody else win it. Kudos to Coach Saban, and the scary part, when I know we're going to maybe talk about it a little later, already preseason number 1 for next year. They said that team might be better than any other team they've ever had with the kids that are coming in. So I don't feel real sorry for Alabama. It's just good to see, like I said, somebody changed, something different. I think if you're really probably asked the real true, football aficionado, probably tired of the SEC being in the national championship.
100%. I'll raise my hand. Yeah.
So I get all that piece.
It's not their fault that they're kicking everybody's
No.
ass. It's just, it is what it is. But, if you're telling me I could have seen a Michigan or a Cincinnati in there, or just from that group of 4, let alone if they had expansion, and maybe we see an Ohio State, and even Ohio State is, Ohio State and Clemson is probably that next tier down that I just really don't want to see either. When we have whatever it is, 131, Division I, teams, or, whatever that number is, I would love to see something else, but I digress, right? The whole point is that this is what kind of went down. I watched the game. I was excited for football. I wasn't really excited to see either one of those teams, but I'm not trying to come off as a hater. I'm just saying, we've been there, done that. And we mentioned this before in the show. And I know specifically, I've said it, for me, college football is the best in the regular season. And unless you get some key matchup bowl games, and we saw a couple of them that were great bowl games, competitive games, and really went down the wire. When you get a matchup, with the Alabama blowing somebody out by 30 or things like that, even though this game was closer, it's just not that intriguing. But
yeah, I would even argue that, if you, again, your 2 other teams, Michigan and Cincinnati, would have been in there. I honestly probably think that there probably was even a little more uptick. I haven't seen the official numbers of the actual viewership of the game. Probably is a little uptick from that nationally, just because Georgia was in it, because it was new for them to be in there, even though they were in there in 17. I get that. My point is, I think that the NCAA, or the Bowl Championship Series, playoffs, whatever you want to term it, I think that they're going to start to realize they've got a bigger issue. People are tired of watching the same stuff. So that's the bottom line. And so I think if they don't do expansion here soon, I think that, let's just argue Georgia and Alabama make it again there next year. Turn off, unless you're a huge just football guy and it's your last game you get to watch for the year. Other than that, I think people are going to be bored with it. And I think that that's a real concern for the sport. And they need to really address this. And I know they had a poor week this week because they didn't address it again. So
yeah,
here nor there.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that a little bit else, but I'm going to save my comments for when we talk about that. Let's kind of tip our hat. If there was anyone on the field that you were going to root for, it was Stetson Bennett. And the fact that kid has gone through difficult challenges is a rough way to say it, but challenges, from walking on, being with his favorite team, hearing all of the pushback saying that he's not ready, play JT Daniels. I heard it on the radio that people were calling for JT to come in at halftime, saying this kid can't get it done. The spotlight is too bright. Bring in JT. And obviously we know what the second half turned into. Just what are your thoughts on Stetson Bennett and the road that he traveled to get to the promised land, the pinnacle, the tippity top of the iceberg?
Well, we both know that what I do on the side and, helping kids and student athletes, and Stetson is, for me, for those kids, that's an example of what it's about. Perseverance and doing the things that you need to do to make it happen. And, kudos to him. Kudos to Coach Smart for sticking with them and doing it. Kudos, at the end of the game, when you see those other guys hugging him, that's when you know he's earned their respect. And it's about what they know he's gone through. And so I just, again, I applauded from that. I thought it was a great storyline to the game, which could have been really boring if, the 5-star quarterback from Georgia goes and plays it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it added to a great storyline. I did find it hilarious the next morning when he was on Good Morning America. I don't think he was quite sober when he was on the show. So, and rightfully so. I did kind of question what sports information director would put a kid who was in his situation, in his limelight, where he'd been, had won the national championship, thought it was a good idea to put him at 7:00 in the morning on Eastern Standard Time for a show. I'm pretty sure if I was the SID, I would have probably figured out, I don't think that young man's going to be in condition to show up and be good. But here nor there, good for him. And what an interesting situation. I mean, they're already talking about next year, this 5-star kid coming into Georgia to, unseat him and take over the job. I mean, that's got to be kind of awkward in the quarterback room.
It just goes right along with his story. He's got to find a way, although he has an option to leave, right? I mean, he's eligible now. So, and really, this is right up your alley, right? As far as what you do and how you monitor these things. All the kids that got extra eligibility to stay, right? 5th year, 6th year seniors, they're done. So all of these kids that are on these rosters, have either have to go or have the option to go. Do you think that's going to play a part and before we get into, transfer portals and things like that and roster sizes, but you're going to have a chance to clear out because there's probably close to about 30 guys on the Georgia team that either have to or can leave this offseason.
Yeah, the other big issue that's coming down the pipe that nobody's really talking about is called roster management. I mean, technically, you will have to be down to 85 here in a year. Next year, you'll have to be back
next
down to 85.
Fall.
Yeah. So how do you get there quickly? And most of these teams have been adding 27, 28, 27 kids because they can. Because right now, because of the really, when you think about the numbers, it's not 25, it's 32, because you get 25 in your initial class, and then you get 7 extra portal kids that you can get. 7 kids leave your program, you can add 7 in because they went in the portal, you can add 7 more. So really, when you think about it, it's 32. So you start to get down to that management. I mean, you brought all those big old classes in that are freshmen and stuff like that. Now all of a sudden, it's going to be a free fall frenzy at that point into the portal, because now you're going to have to slowly, hey, Johnny, we really like you, but we're going to have to move you on. And move. I mean, it's going to get very interesting how this is happening. I mean, I know that, the rich get richer, the big programs, they saw it as a express open way ticket to, just building crazy, stupid rosters. And then, at the end of the day, getting rid of trash with how they want to, when they want to. And it wasn't designed that way. And it sucks that it's going to end up happening. And again, the trickle-down effect will be to high school kids, because those kids that are already in the programs, they're the ones that the next programs are going to look for and go and take and stuff like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. And of course, as we both know so well, the NCAA and their great, leadership, they're just going to tell you got to get to the number, but they're not going to tell you how to get there and how to do these things. And, you might want to think about these things. They're just letting it be for free for all. So
without going down the rabbit hole, right? Because I'm going there a little bit right now. You think that there's a way for, this is the wrong word by saying lesser schools, but not the what we think of the Bamas and the Georgias. Is there a way for them to elevate their programs, because there's going to be so many other programs that are going to have to reduce their roster, and even going down, all the way, maybe trickling down all the way to D2 or something like that? Is there a way to kind of look at that glass half full?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it right on the nose. I mean, there is trickle down effect. It's the problem is the psychology of the student athlete. That's where the issue becomes for me personally, because yes, you're absolutely right. There's teams that have done really well last 2 years. Pitt's one of them that has super senior year. Now Miami is a good example. They could probably do pretty good roster management and rechange their whole roster this next year through the portal and doing these things. And I know USC only took 6 initials on the in this class, which means that they got a lot. If they don't sign, if let's just say they sign 5 more, that's 11. Now all of a sudden they've got, the math 14. We need Dory here. That's 21. They can go out in the portal and go mess around and go get. So yeah, I mean, the programs can definitely, and the trickle down is, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of kids that are really FBS players right now, high school players that are only getting FCS offers. So it's already trickled down, and it'll be good, because the one good thing that this is kind of the message to the young kids, listen to me when I say this, it doesn't mean that, look at we'll talk about it probably later, about the situation at Washington State. The Inkart Ward quarterback, who is an FCS quarterback, is now at a Power 5 program in Washington State as the quarterback. Start lower. He's got the intangibles. He's like, as I understand, it's like 6'4", 215. And things can happen. And the same thing can happen to you. You can be at the Wyoming tight end and end up at Georgia, which happened this year. So there are some good things that can come from it. So don't just think that you're pigeonholed and you have to end up at the same program. You may end up at the end of the day at a better program down the road. Because again, it's about proof in the pudding. When you get out there, you can show what you can do at the college level. You're much more valuable to a college football coach in the portal than a high school kid that they're taking a complete gamble on and they don't know anything about. They don't have any college film on them, anything like that. So it's, yeah, you hit it around the nose. There is a glass half full to the scenario. But again, the psychology of the student athlete, because it's also the other end of the spectrum. There's 7,000 kids that are in the portal, athletics wide, and only 25% of them have a home. So you do the math, and you left the house, you left your house to head over to the other house. Well, you can't go back to the other house because it's just kind of not a real good feeling. So I'm not saying it's not being done, because it is being shown out there to be done, but it's, you know what I mean? It's just once you kind of pass that thing, it kind of makes it bad. So, to any student athlete out there, I mean, just know these things are out there, and then that's the reality where we're dealing with. But yes, you can definitely help. You see some lower programs really improving quickly. But the bad part is, once that class is gone, you might be in the back same scenario, going to the portal again.
So for a parent, a student athlete, or something like you that you advise, where does it get concerning for you? As far as X amount of time has passed and either you haven't, been picked up by a school, or you haven't, transferred out, or whatever the case is. Is it sometime like, we're in January right now. You're like, okay, this is fine. But, if we get to the certain date, if you've got an offer there, or you need to make a decision, you better make it now, because you're getting to a point where the threshold is just not going to be a good situation for you.
Well, so, you sometimes you cue me up and say it's SAA tidbits. We'll just do a tidbit here right now. So give parents real clear understanding. So in the state of Ohio, there's a great guy who does some great work back there. It's called scoutingohio.com. He's already gone through it. He did last year's commits. So in the state of Ohio, which is one of the better states when it comes to commits, there were 126 FBS D1 commits. This year, at the same time, there's only 66 in the state of Ohio.
Wow.
It's just in half. I mean, so where are those other 60 kids going? That on average, the state of Ohio averages. So it's a concerning number. It's a huge trickle down. So to my advice to any parent, I mean, you get a D1 offer from a major university, I would take it and grab it as fast as you possibly can, because it's like, Willy Wonka. There will only be so many of those golden tickets to be handed out nowadays. And so you better take what you can get. And so its effects are going to be definitely felt down the road. And it's, again, the trickle down again. So if you do this, 3 years in a row, that's 180 kids that got knocked down. How does that work? They go to the FCS kids, they get knocked down because it's always a trickle down effect.
Yeah.
So they get it and they get better players, you know. So, and then can you get into, and if you're really a D2 player, but there's so many good FCS players that came to that level, are you good academically enough to get into a Division III? So those are things you need to take care of. Make sure your academics are right, so you have all the options around the table that you can. Because you're probably going to NAI. And here's the other misnomer that people don't know about. Really, the sad part about the portal, it's done two things. One, it's hurt high school kids, as I use a clear example right there. Bigger one is the JUCOs. Coaches don't have to go to the JUCO anymore. They can basically find it in the portal.
Yeah.
Redo it. And so JUCOs are going to be in a real hurt here. And they're already in a hurt. We have none in the state of Washington. They're all only ones that are left are in California and in Arizona. And they've been hit a couple times fiscally and financially. And, you know, so it's going to be very interesting to see what ends up happening with those programs too. And will they be able to survive? Because it's, you know, it's about dollars that they bring in and how they can support themselves, because they are self-sustaining. If you've ever watched Last Chance U, it's not high-end Division I football, that's for sure.
No, it's funny that you said that, because that's exactly where I was going to go with my next statement. You know, for fans out there that watch Last Chance U and things like that, it's exactly what you're talking about. You know, those programs are going to have a much more difficult time of getting these kids and saying, hey, we can get you here or we can get you there. And they're going to look around and say, well, you're going to have to be exceptional. And we go back to watching a show like Last Chance U. One of the biggest struggles for these kids were grades, maintaining their grades, elevating their grades so they could get into programs besides staying out of trouble for some of them, right? I don't want to put that umbrella over everyone, but some of the kids had gotten themselves in trouble, you know, and so on and so forth. So we don't need to get into all of that because we could go on with things like that. We go back to the national title game. Like you said, it was kind of a snooze fest. It was absolutely amazing by the Georgia defense, the way they contain Alabama. But, you know, we first saw the beginning of the game, we saw 5 field goals, right? I mean, that's just kind of the way it happened. And then at the end of the game, we had this explosion of fireworks, you know, in the fourth quarter with 29 fourth quarter points and 20 of them by Georgia. It was, I don't know, like everybody just kind of woke up and said, okay, it's time to kind of get going. Even though Alabama only scored, you know, X amount of points, everything started pushing, right? And maybe that was because of the situation of the game where they were starting to fall behind. But what were your thoughts when Stetson went back to pass, got hit, fumbled out, recovered with, I don't know, a millimeter between his foot and the out of bounds line, and then Alabama comes down and then throws the touchdown to the tight end. They go up. What were your initial thoughts when all that stuff kind of happened?
I kind of addressed the thing we just talked earlier about. I thought, oh no, this is not going to be good for Stetson.
Yeah.
This will be the last picture that everybody will see. This will be it. This is why we shouldn't have had him in at the end of the game, blah, 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 on and on. And to be quite frank and honest with you, I was on the text line with a couple besides you, I was on the other side with my couple GA buddies that we both know who, you know, where Coach Saban originally came from, Don James. We were shocked, nonchalant that kid kind of went to the sideline and luckily kept his foot in bounds, which was, that in itself was a miracle. But here nor there, we just thought was like, wow, we can't believe he just kind of nonchalantly went and did that, because there was no whistle. There was clear it was a live ball. I mean, it was going to be acted like a live ball. So we were a little bit shocked by that whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, and they make it happen. But you know, good for him. And you know, we were having a good laugh when we played the Whammy in Miami right before the end of the game, or end of the half. Russell Harrison, our great cornerback, who we were telling to get all the way to the end line because they had the really good wide receivers at Miami, because we knew they were just going to bomb it. They threw the first one and he scores, but there was a penalty on Miami. And what do you think they did the next play? Right back and did it again. And then we were luckily we were able to stop it. But my point is the same thing. Stetson, I mean, what a great play for him to score that touchdown. The ball Alabama jumps off sides. He just continues on the play, and they were going after that left corner. But you know, and then I know he was yeah, they were going after him, and they get it and make it happen. So good for him, and good for, I'm sure Stetson's going to have a fun weekend in Athens, Georgia this weekend.
Yeah, and going back to the corners, Chris Owens was out. Jalen Armour Davis, he played, but he had been suffering through a hip. So their corners were vulnerable, and people knew that. I just love the way Stetson bounced back. He has a quote here. He says, when he was interviewed, he said, "I wasn't going to be the reason we lost. I wasn't going to let that happen." So when they, pretty much like, hey, after you fumbled, they come down and score a touchdown, and he went bing, bang, boom. I mean, I believe it was 4 or 5 plays. Yep. Right. And because you had a couple of plays, you had the personal foul penalty, 15 yards, tackle on 15 yards. And then he hit the 45-yard touchdown pass that puts him up. And his demeanor didn't change. He was cool, calm, and collective. He looked poised and control. And it's funny, right? My first love of sport is boxing. I grew up, that boxing was the number one thing, not football, baseball, basketball. I grew up in a house of boxers. It's a long story. And I just thought of that. It's like he got punched in the mouth and woke him up. And that's kind of like, I was just like, man, the worst thing that could happen to him. Now everyone's looking at him, right? The pressure's mounted. You got everybody on TV and radio calling for a quarterback change. And he just came down and did what he had to do. And it was just, I just love the fact that he said, it was like, I wasn't going out like that. That's what he's pretty much saying, is like, when that happened, I was just like, no, I'm not going out like this. If we lose, we lose, but I'm not going to just kind of curl up in my corner and just take it. I'm going to go out fighting. And that's just the definition of his career. Yeah. It's absolutely incredible. And we know Dory's not here, and Dory's been ranting and raving about Stetson Bennett all season long. And I knew that she was just so happy about the results in that game. So
absolutely. I thought, the other one too, is I thought of that whole series where I thought Monk, and it probably was under the Georgia game plan to keep Stetson to be the game manager and kind of keep thinking. And then Monk came out and he was aggressive. They threw 3 or 4 straight passes. It was, yeah. I'm like, why haven't we been doing this? I mean, yeah. They had established a little bit of a run game. And so let's play action pass. Let's do a little bit of, just some things. And, the thing is, with any quarterback, you just got to find what they do best and figure it out. And then I felt like that Monk kind of got basically he like opened up and figured this thing out a little bit. Yeah. And things going. So it was a little, so good on him.
Yeah. I wrote it down here because I wanted to bring it up. I think that them losing the SEC championship game was the best thing for them. They had dominated all year. Obviously, they did not take Alabama lightly, right? Maybe subconsciously, who knows? Because Alabama was vulnerable all year, right? Lost to Texas A&M, should have lost to Auburn. They had a couple other games that they easily could have lost. I mean, we're looking at Alabama. They could have been a 3-4 loss team, depending on how certain things would have happened. And obviously with the Heisman winner, and the way he played down the stretch was key. But Alabama couldn't lose that SEC championship game. Georgia could. So I think Alabama showed their cards and they dominated. I mean, it was a total domination when they played against Georgia. But at that point, Georgia had a month to prepare for your best shot because you already got it. They said, okay, well, we know how the defense was going to play us, and we know how the sacks, and we didn't sack Young. So they had a couple of sacks in the game also, and they were able to contain them. Obviously, losing 2 NFL type of wide receivers out for the year was huge, right? Because you could see the drop off, because they pretty much brought freshmen in, at the wide receiver spot. So I thought there were a lot of factors, but I think the fact that they had, and as coach, once you put it on film, you've got it. And that's something that you prepare for. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think that, Alabama obviously came up with a great game plan in the the SEC championship game. Took away everything, all the run game, and forced the hand to make Stetson be the guy. Great game plan. I'm sure that's what Michigan would have loved to have been able to do in their game. Unfortunately, they ran into quite a physical buzzsaw. I think the other thing that I found interesting, what Coach Smart said later after the game, he said that, and I know we're going to talk about the handshake, but it was interesting.
Yeah, we can get right into it right now. That's fine.
Well, what he said was, everybody questioned us in the fourth quarter, said we were tired and we were this and that.
Yeah.
He goes, we did extra work all the way up until this game to show everybody in the country that in the fourth quarter, we were going to flip the other one back on them. Yep. And I think that, and then at the end of the game, when Coach Smart and Coach Saban shook hands, Coach Saban just flat out told him, he says, man, you guys kicked our butts in the fourth quarter.
100%.
And did the reverse. The great thing about working for a guy like Coach Saban, i.e. Smart, you know his modus operandi, you know how to get it. So it's a psychological game that you can play with your team and say, Alabama thought they could muscle you guys in the fourth quarter, and they proved it. And we have it on tape. And so how are we going to? And that's when you have great coaching from Coach Smart, when he just said, we're going to meet fire with fire. So in the fourth quarter, we will dominate. And they did. And it was impressive. And again, this is not to take away anything from Georgia had, but to be honest with what you just said, Alabama had a lot off the table. I mean, 2 starting wide receivers probably going to the NFL, really good corners that play well for them. They had a lot of guys that were down. But again, I'm not here to get excuse. Georgia did win the game, and I was pretty happy for a guy that's the defensive coordinator for him to win the national championship and make it happen. So, good for him and good for the team. And so it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, it was great. And I just think that those type of coaches just appreciate, even if they get their asses whooped, they appreciate the competition, right? Nick Saban didn't like the fact he lost a national title, but he liked the battle, and obviously he has a relationship with Kirby. Like there's respect in that, right? There's that respect there to say, hey, we gave it whatever we had and we left it on the field. And he mentioned at the press conference where he stopped his defensive tackle and his quarterback from getting up and said, I just want to let everybody know this is not on them. I'm super proud of them. And we wouldn't be here without these two guys, and there were no excuses or anything like that. But, there's some appreciation there, and say, hey, and you can argue it's one of his better years because of the up and downs and the vulnerability, and everything else that we saw the entire season. We watched Alabama all year and we saw they're like, oh, they were this close. Yeah, they whooped on some people, but there were other games they're like, man, they just, they struggled against Florida or this or that. Like, we saw it, and he had no choice if he wanted to get into the top 4 that he had to go out there and beat Georgia in that SEC championship game. And he lost Menchie in that game. And then he lost Williams the second game with Georgia, right? And it's unfortunate. They blow out their knees. When I saw the injury to Williams, I saw right away because on the replay, you could see his knee moved to that side, right? And, I do a show with an orthopedic surgeon and things like that. We've talked about it. So that was a clear sign to me. I was like, well, he's done. And then he walked off and everything else. Like, you could walk on an ACL, right? Obviously, if there's, depends how much damage, MCL, ACL, and, UCL, it all depends what's holding it there. But, you saw it right away. I was like, wow, that's huge because, these are guys that they couldn't stop. And now they're gone. And listen, there were opportunities there. We saw some drop passes. We saw a drop pass in the end zone. We saw some big plays, some drop passes, key plays where they didn't convert on first downs because they didn't catch the ball. And it's just, it's just one of those things. It's almost unusual to see, when Alabama or Georgia don't operate at their fullest because we're so used to seeing, these teams play at a high level. It was a great game, a lot of storylines. Obviously, you hope that the kids come out, get better. I think Williams is done. I think he's going to go to the NFL. I think he already announced. It'll be interesting what Menchie's going to do, because these guys obviously are going to be, high draft picks. And, the way technology is now, they'll be up and running 3-4 months and things like that. So it's it's absolutely amazing. And with technology, think about it, right? The last time that Georgia won, somebody would have blown out their ACL. We're talking about their career is possibly over, right?
Yep.
It's just absolutely great. Now it's like, hey, don't worry about it. We're gonna do a little snap there. We're gonna put an internal brace. We're gonna connect that, and off you go. $6 million man, you're off and ready. So incredible.
Yeah, it was. You're absolutely right. It's the age of technology, and again, kind of go back to your other point about the Williams kid. I thought, and going back to the handshake, I also thought that was classy of Kirby to ask Saban about him and what's going on with them and things like that. I just mutual respect. This is probably a little hint to young coaches and stuff like that. It's more than just the game. In the game you want to compete to the highest level, but at the end of the day, great sportsmanship by both coaches and everything. And what you said about Coach Saban at the end in his press conference and what he did in handling both of those young men and everything like that, couldn't be more proud of him as a coach. And I think that's something valuable for all coaches to watch and learn from that point, because that's what coaching is. These kids are young, talented, extremely talented athletes, and they're going to have bright futures and go to the NFL. But at the end of the day, to say those things, that will be something they'll, for 34 years from now, when they're out their reunion, they'll be saying, "Remember Coach Saban? He stopped us from getting up from the press conference. That was shocking. He would do that. Because we all know, like a Woody Hayes and a Bo Schembechler, that wouldn't happen.
No. There's no way.
Yeah.
But it's real personal, especially when everybody's competing for the same athlete next door. Now it's different. Everybody's going all over the place. You get people here from Notre Dame, Michigan coming out to see the offensive tackle out here in Washington. It's just different. The back and forth now is just it's common. Instead of just trying to, get everybody out of, Michigan or Ohio or anything like that. But, there's a lot of good things. And going back to the Kirby Smart, comment, like you said, it's just sportsmanship. And listen, he knows he wasn't playing. The Georgia defensive coordinator knew he wasn't playing. He was like, yo, this kid's out. So, there was one less thing for them to worry about. Is one less thing that the safety has to worry about, how they rotate the help and everything else. They say, hey, we could play a certain way, and they were able to get a lot of pressure and really dominate the line of scrimmage. I wrote it down here. Fourth quarter, they allowed 3.4 yards per play despite being on the field for 28 snaps. I mean, they held Alabama to 73 rushing yards. 4 punts, 2 turnovers, dominated the red zone. Georgia defense was number 1 all year, and they showed up in the biggest game. And clearly, it was clear as day that they were the number 1 team in the nation on defense.
There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. The funny part, though, that I'm sure you saw it, I'm not sure if everybody else saw it, but it was hilarious when Ringo got that interception. Coach Smart was telling him to get down.
Yeah.
And Ringo was like, "Nah, I'm going to score. I'm going to make sure I'm happy on next Friday night in Athens. I'm the one that returned the ball. Me, girls.
Yeah.
I'm right here. Yeah.
Hey, I got to be honest with you. When I saw him intercepted, the first thing in my mind was to get down also. I'm going to be fair. I'm not going to talk, out of both sides of my mouth. When it happened, I was like, okay, get down. We're good. You're good. Okay, we're running out the clock, everything else. And then he just kind of ran up the sideline and nobody tackled him. I was like, that's even better. That's even better.
I saw a picture today where he's crossed the line and somebody got it, the reverse picture from the other way, and it's the Smart family behind him as he's scoring. And Kirby's mom's going crazy. The wife's jumping. The kid's going crazy.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's a really cool picture. So yeah, while Dad's yelling, "Get down, get down, get down." So it was a good, cool finish to the game.
I'm pretty sure it went from get down to go, go, go real quick. Once he saw the opening, he was like, "Wait a minute! Don't listen to coach. Don't listen to me." and it didn't matter, because if you look at the sideline, he probably couldn't hear the coach either, because everybody else is yelling go. They're all like, yeah, just go. And the coach's like, get down. Like that. I'm sorry, coach, I couldn't hear you. It's just great.
It reminds me of my old basketball coaching days when I used to see one of my kids shoot a bomb, and I'm like, no, 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 swish. Yes, just like we planned it.
Nice job, Johnny.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck that was, but we just scored, so it doesn't really matter. So
it just my lord, just an incredible football season. I mean, all around, it's just it went by fast. There were so many different stages, right? From the Michigan States early on, and Kenneth Walker the third, and just all Michigan and their defense, and the huge win. To me, that the win against Ohio State is the one that's going to stand out for me the most, just because of the win, but the reaction afterwards. Bethlehem. It's just the exuberance. In fact, they still might be in the stadium partying from that Ohio State game. They're probably shoveling snow, whatever, but that game will stand out for me. That there's so many different games and great players, and the transfer portal that was a big part of the conversation. And one part of the conversation that's just not going to go away, it's being brought up again, is being discussed again, is playoff expansion. And I just don't, at this point, I don't see it happening, because you have to have everybody in agreement. And it's just something that's not happening with this expansion. They won 12 teams. Kevin Warren from Big Ten and Jim Phillips from the ACC just won 8 teams. The SEC doesn't want 8 teams. If anything, they want 12, or better yet, they said, hey, listen, we don't need this. We're dominating this anyway. We're in the national title game all the time. I think they've won it 15 out of 16 or something like that. So the SEC commissioner was like, I'm getting tired of this. You guys wanted to do this. You complained about it. We bring it to the table. The people that complain the most now are giving us the hardest time to have some finality on it. I'm getting to a point now where I'm just going to step away, and you guys are going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, that was my frustration too. I know Sankey was on the outside, literally in the hallway, couldn't even get in the meeting, and I think that he has to be in that meeting and just discuss this whole piece. I think that they're going to run into a ratings issue if they continue kind of this route. If it's the Ohio States, the Clemsons, the Alabamas, the Georgias that continue to be in the show. I just think and I think there's even a bigger piece for me from a recruiting point. I mean, if you just see the same, if you're a kid right now, if you're a student athlete and you want to go to a place and you want to play for national champion, it's important for you to play for it. I cannot argue against you for not wanting to go to Alabama, because every single class in the last 12 years at Alabama has played for a national championship. So, I mean, you would be dumb not to go to Alabama or an Ohio State or a Clemson to be in the playoff. And Georgia's been there a little bit more, but for the league that we love so much, we haven't seen a team in the playoffs in 6 years. We haven't, we're not in the hunt. We have nobody in the sniff. We're not, being mentioned at all on College game day. We're usually
if you're being mentioned at all, it's not usually in the brightest light.
Yeah, it's the hour and a half point. Oh yeah, we'll talk about the Pac-12, a couple games here, that, and move on. And then at the end, it's SEC and Big Ten are only ones that talked about, and then talking the national championship. And I don't care who you are, it gets to be boring if it's the same old book. So I think that they have to address this thing. There's so many easy ways that I know we've discussed on this show. You can have a home game and keep the travel down.
I don't even think it's all that. Besides that, I think a perfect example is the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is being wishy-washy. One of the reasons, because they have exclusive rights to the Rose Bowl. And they're like, well, if we open things up, we no longer have that exclusivity. We're going to lose that. So it's almost like, you don't want to give up your slice, but you're not thinking that you could get a whole pie. And that's just one of the examples. And I think that's what's happening with some of these other conferences and people making decisions. They don't want to give up something in order to get something. And to me, I'm just like, well, you can't play both sides. It's like the Pac-12 is like, oh, let's do expansion, but I'm not giving up the Rose Bowl. What? So that's why I'm concerned now. Before I had hope, Now I'm concerned because now we're going back to the fundamental problem with everything: greed. Right?
Yep.
Greed.
Yep.
The reason the NCAA is in it with the portal and the NIL and all this other stuff and things like, it's because they didn't want to give up anything. And now, and that becomes a problem. How can they get over the hump and finally come to the table and agree on something? Because it seems like there's different scenarios, right? There's I don't know if it's the 6-8-12 or the 8-10-12 that they have to agree upon, let alone agree upon the playoff expansion. How can they get to the table and finalize something?
Well,
Easy question, right? Easy question.
Yeah. So easy. Thanks, Will. I think the most important thing, I think from an economic standpoint, I think that's where they have to always go from. And I kind of use what you talked about, the Pac-12. I mean, you won't give up on the Rose Bowl, but you won't get a deal with DirecTV done and get your product on TV all the time. Okay. Yeah. That's short-sighted thinking. I've understood that this week there's a Washington State Stanford basketball game supposed to play 2 p.m. for a basketball game this week. I'm not real smart, but if you're going to play a 2:00 game and you want people there, you're not going to get anybody there. If the kids are at school, who's going to be in the stadium? I mean, it's just the dumbest thing. And so my point back to what you were saying is, it's economics, man. If you want to make your league bigger, better, and things like that, you have to think outside the box. Forget the Rose Bowl, and like you said, get the whole pie. I mean, think about that in the pandemic year. And I know I've stated this before, but the SEC was able to hand out $23 million checks to every program in the SEC the year of the pandemic. Not this past year, the year before. $23 million. The Pac-12 doesn't even barely make $23 million for the year, let alone out checks. And so my point is, and to your point, I'm sure, is that you have to think bigger box, bigger everything, and how this can and be an advantage to you, and get your product out there and get your brand out there, do the things that you want, and make the game better. And I think that at the end of the day, the TV guys will see it and they'll want to be part of it, and the advertisers and everybody, and we can all be happy. The Rose Bowl can be, we can all work this out, but you have to get in the room and really talk about the economics of this. And if you don't, I think that the haves and the have-nots are going to get worse. And that's really my concern with this whole deal, especially with the NIL, the way that thing's going right now. Kirby and Coach Saban talked about it. It was pretty funny though. So they both talked about that the NIL, the way it's being handled right now, is not good for college football, because the top guys are just going to be able to take advantage. If anybody doesn't know the story, Texas A&M boosters basically paid $25 million to have the #1 class in the country. So if you do the math, let's just say they got 25 kids, you spend $1 million per kid to get them to come to your school. Yep. Okay, so there's that economics that can you do it? I don't think it's sustainable. I know that just Pac-12 programs, I could probably name 8 of them that probably financially could not do that every year and try to put that thing together. So that's one. 2, on the other end of that stick, after Coach Saban got done talking about it, I just saw something on Twitter where the state of Alabama just passed a law where they opened a loophole so that Coach Saban can now go compete against the Texas A&Ms and go get those NIL deals done, so make that he can compete with them. So it's that 6-1. I mean, you talk about.
Listen, we talked about it in previous show. The cat's out of the bag, and you can't put it back in. So if you don't figure out something soon, I've read something where somebody suggested paying the players, and then almost like signing them to a contract and saying that you can't leave. If we sign you, you have to stay here for X amount of time, and you're treated almost like a professional athlete where you're getting paid. And now we get into all these different scenarios, and for all the people, I just want to finish off with the playoff expansion real quick. For all the people that say, look at what happened to Michigan, look at what happened to Cincinnati, they couldn't compete at that level. Why would we want more teams? This is why. It's simple. I'm gonna break it down. Let's say there was a school dance going on, and only the 4 cutest, hottest people were invited to the dance. All right, yeah. maybe they're, the jock, the this, the that. They should be there because they represent the school. They look the best. They dress the best. They're the most popular. We're just talking about, hey, just let everybody else get in the dance. I don't need to dance with the prettiest girl in the room, but I could dance. I could go find somebody else, have a good time, things like that. When you let more teams in, you can dance with players you're recruiting and say, okay, why don't you come here? Why don't you come here? We have a good enough team that we can get into that top 8, 10, 12. And all we need to do is to show up to the dance. And every time you advance, every time you're consistently showing up to the dance, every time that you may have an upset, you're going to keep building your program. Alabama and Georgia are already there. They've built, it's a machine. By allowing more people to dance, you can slowly build up your program and say, hey, we consistently go to the dance, right? But right now, if we take basketball, a Butler would never be in the national championship game. And Butler got good in basketball because they started to get into March Madness, make a run here, make a run there. And then all of a sudden people started going. Gonzaga is good now because they have finally got better and eventually got to the dance, eventually get to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, so on and so forth. They got there, but they had to start somewhere. But that's part of the recruiting. And that's why we want playoff expansions, not because we don't think that they're going to get their butts whooped by Alabama or Georgia. It's because it allows them to start recruiting and saying things to other players, saying, we have a chance to build something here. And maybe by the time, if you're a freshman, by the time you're a senior, maybe we are in a championship game. Maybe we make it to the semis and keep building upon the program and your stats and your face. And we know how passionate people are about being an alum at college. You will be part of that foundation that started everything. That's just my thoughts.
I'm with you 1,000%. I couldn't agree more. The only problem with your analogy is this. I went to an all boys high school. So the dance was,
Okay, I got a quick question here. All right, here we go.
It was a little awkward when you use your analogy because.
So I went to Cardinal Hayes my first year in high school. It's a Catholic high school up in the Bronx, right? And every time we had dances, we invited the all girls Catholic high school to come, and we had our dances, and that was a normality. You always had to invite. So does O'Day do that? Do they invite when there's dances and stuff like that?
We definitely invite holy names. Usually is like one dance, and then after that we're all by ourselves after that because we're not nice guys that never come back again for the second dance. So but that's for another show and another discussion.
Oh man, we'd have to bust those ones out.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Jamal Mashburn at Cardinal Hayes didn't have problem finding dates for the dance and great players like that. The all-pro tackle that played at Pittsburgh also. Anyway, listen, let's get on out here. Dory Bennett, hey, we're thinking about you. We hope you feel better. To the Washburn family and to the Reed family, they just suffered a loss. Also, it was one of Dory's friends that just passed away the other day. Wally, we hope you're in a better place. And we just want to give a shout out to everyone involved, so Dory Bennett and the Washburn family, the Reed family that lost an uncle, a brother, a family member, and a friend. We're thinking about you during these difficult times. Scott,
with you. Peace.
It's good to see you, buddy. All right.
You too, buddy. Have a good night.
Care.